Warhammer 40,000's First Legion was not merely another army. It was the template from which all Space Marines were born. The First Legion, the Dark Angels. They were the Emperor's first true angels of death, forged personally on Holy Terra during the final days of the Unification Wars. Before glory, before the Imperium, before even the Great Crusade itself. And their very first mission defined them forever. Not conquest, not liberation. Extermination. At the gates of the Imperial Palace, the Dark Angels were unleashed against the Thunder Warriors, the Emperor's own former creations, when they rose in rebellion. The First Legion did not hesitate. They annihilated them completely. That was the Dark Angels' true purpose. While other legions became conquerors, the Dark Angels became the Emperor's secret destroyers. But for 10,000 years, a single shame has haunted them from the shadows. The breaking point of their story began on a distant death world called Caliban, a world of endless forests, ancient knightly orders, and monsters twisted by the corruption of chaos. Into those forests fell an infant Primarch, Lion Jonson. Alone and surrounded by horrors, the Lion survived through sheer instinct and terrifying willpower. As the years passed, he became something almost mythical, a silent hunter stalking the darkness of Caliban itself. Eventually, he was discovered by Luther, a legendary knight and leader of one of Caliban's great orders. Luther took the child in as his own son. He gave him a name, and together the two changed the fate of the planet forever. Side by side, they led a brutal campaign across Caliban. One by one, the great beasts of the forests were hunted to extinction. The knightly orders united beneath a single banner. For a brief moment, Caliban knew peace. Then the Emperor arrived. When he revealed the truth of the Lion's origins, command of the First Legion was handed to his rediscovered son. The Dark Angels were reborn beneath their Primarch. But in that same moment, the first crack appeared. Luther was too old to become a true Space Marine. He could only undergo partial augmentation, forever standing beside greatness, but never fully becoming part of it. And slowly, admiration became bitterness. Then bitterness became jealousy. And jealousy became betrayal. What made the Dark Angels truly terrifying was not simply their strength. It was how they fought. The Lion created a system known as the Hexagrammaton, 6 specialized wings inspired by the ancient knightly traditions of Caliban. Each wing had a purpose. Each wing was terrifying in its own way. The Deathwing were elite Terminators who shattered enemy lines through overwhelming force. The Ravenwing struck with impossible speed, hunting enemies across the battlefield on bikes and light vehicles. The Ironwing commanded tanks, dreadnoughts, and devastating armored assaults. The Firewing specialized in infiltration and assassination, eliminating commanders before wars had even truly begun. The Stormwing formed the Legion's relentless infantry corps, disciplined, adaptable, and unbreakable. And then there was the Dreadwing. The Dreadwing was not a military force. It was annihilation itself. Radiation weapons, phosphex fire, forbidden technology from the dark age of technology. Weapons so horrific that entire planets could be erased from existence. The Emperor trusted these weapons to only one legion, the First. When Horus began his rebellion, he understood one terrifying truth. If the Dark Angels reached Terra in time, the heresy might fail. So Horus sent them to the farthest edges of the galaxy, far from the Imperial Palace, far from the final war. Then he unleashed Conrad Kurz and the Night Lords to delay them even further. The Lion hunted Kurz relentlessly across the stars. Their battles became legendary. In one brutal confrontation, the Lion broke Kurz's spine with his bare hands. But the galaxy itself seemed to betray them. Warp storms consumed entire regions of space. Communication collapsed. Routes vanished into madness. And by the time the Dark Angels finally broke through the storms, Terra was already burning. The Lion realized he had failed. Too late to defend the Emperor. Too late to stop Horus. And in his rage, he unleashed destruction upon the traitor legion's homeworlds. Planet after planet was burned from orbit without mercy. The First Legion had become vengeance itself. Then came Caliban. When the Dark Angels finally returned home after the Horus Heresy, the planet opened fire on them. Luther had fallen. During the Lion's long absence, chaos had poisoned his heart completely. The warriors left behind on Caliban turned against their Primarch. The Fallen were born. Enraged, the Lion ordered the bombardment of his own world before descending to the surface personally to confront Luther. And there, amidst the burning ruins of Caliban, the two old brothers met for the final time. What followed was catastrophic. The Lion hesitated for a single moment. One final spark of mercy. One final chance for forgiveness. Luther did not hesitate. Empowered by chaos, he unleashed a devastating psychic strike that shattered the Lion and drove him to the ground. And in that instant, Luther understood what he had done. His oldest friend lay broken before him. The truth crashed down upon him all at once. The betrayal, the jealousy, the corruption. Luther collapsed in horror. But the Chaos Gods were not finished. Furious at Luther's failure, they unleashed a massive warp storm that tore Caliban apart. The planet died, and the traitor Dark Angels scattered across space and time itself. These survivors became known as the Fallen. Meanwhile, the gravely wounded Lion was taken deep within a hidden fortress monastery built from the shattered remains of Caliban. The Rock. There, mysterious beings known as the Watchers in the Dark placed the Lion into a deep sleep that would last 10,000 years. The shame of Caliban consumed the Dark Angels. They buried the truth from the Imperium, from their allies, even from their own brothers. Those who remained loyal became known as the Unforgiven. And for 10 millennia, they hunted the Fallen obsessively across the galaxy. They abandoned wars to pursue even a single lead. They silenced inquisitors, executed witnesses, even killed Imperial allies to protect their secret. captured Fallen were dragged into the depths of the rock, where interrogator chaplains used horrific torture in desperate attempts to force repentance. The Dark Angels did not fear death. They feared the truth. Then, in the dark days of the Era Indomitus, the Lion finally awoke. But he was no longer the same man. The furious warrior of the Great Crusade was gone. What emerged instead was older, wiser. A king carrying the full weight of 10,000 years of failure, betrayal, and loss. And with his return came strange new powers. The Lion discovered an ability known as the Forest Walk, allowing him to travel secretly across vast distances through hidden pathways within the warp itself. Yet the greatest change was not his power. It was his mercy. For the first time in 10,000 years, the Lion looked upon some of the fallen not as monsters, but as broken sons. Those who had not fully surrendered to chaos were offered redemption instead of execution. A choice, loyalty in exchange for forgiveness. These redeemed warriors became known as the Risen, and for the Dark Angels, this changed everything. For centuries they had hunted shadows in the dark. Now their Primarch offered them a path beyond shame. The First Legion is no longer merely defined by secrecy and vengeance. Now, at last, the Dark Angels fight for something greater than guilt.